Hello everyone, good morning. So let's have a quick daily briefing for today. Just a quick market recap on yesterday's data. Okay, so first things, the German economic sentiment for the month of June. So previous data was 84.4 and forecasted at 86. And the actual data yesterday for the German economic sentiment was 79.8. So lower than the forecasted, but it did not beat the previous data prior to the month of June. And then next thing is the GDP for quarter-on-quarter basis during the first quarter of the year. So previous data is negative 1.8% and same thing at forecasted. And ang release time yesterday was 5 p.m. And for the quarter-on-quarter basis, it was actually better than the forecasted and the previous data as well. Followed by the GDP year-on-year basis for the Eurozone, same thing. Forecasted and previous still at change at negative 0.6%. And for the actual data for year-on-year basis, it was negative 0.3%. So slightly better than the forecasted and the previous data. And next thing is the Eurozone economic sentiment for the month of June. So release time, same thing, 5 p.m. And for previous data, it was 84. And for the month of June, it was 81.3. So it did not beat the previous data for the economic sentiment for the Eurozone. So here's the market reaction last night, or yesterday rather, for the Euro dollar. So prior to the release of the Eurozone data, as you can see here, during the 30 minutes time frame, so the euro dollars it was actually a neutral effect after the release of the Eurozone data. So the price was actually consolidating around the 1.2160 level right here, and then it went up to 1.2180. But before the European session closes, it was actually a choppy area around here. But during the Asian session, the current price of the euro dollars is around the 1.2170, respectively. Now, next thing is the exports for the dollar. Previous data was 202.67 billion, and the actual was 204.99 billion. So slightly higher than the previous data. Followed by the imports. Previous data was 277.69 billion, and the release, and then the actual data was 273.89 billion. So lower than the previous data. Followed by the trade balance for the month of April for the dollar as well. So previous data is negative 75 billion and negative 69 billion for forecasted. And the actual negative 68.90 billion. Next thing is the trade balance for Canadian dollar. Previous data is negative 0.70 billion. And the actual data is 0.59 billion. So it beats the previous data for Canadian dollar trade balance. And one of the key data last night is the JOLTS job openings for the month of April for the dollar. So previous data is 8.28 or 2.288 million and forecasted at 8.300 M. And release time 10 p.m. And for the actual data for the month of April, the JOLTS job openings for the dollar, it was 9.286 million. So better than the forecasted and beats the previous data as well. So in particular, obviously the dollar data outperformed the CAD data last night. So that is why, as you can see here, on the 30 minutes time frame yesterday, there's a good momentum of the dollar CAD during the 30 minutes. So actually, after the release of the data last night for the dollar and CAD, the price of the USD CAD went up for almost 40 pips after the release. So obviously, the dollar Dollar's data was better comparing on the CAD last night. But during the Asian session, the current price of the USD CAD was around the 1.21 level, respectively. So economic data today. So earlier, there's a data for oil, the API, or the American Petroleum Institute, or the API weekly crude oil stock. So previous data is negative 5.36 M and forecasted at negative 3.576 million. And release time 4:30 a.m. earlier. And for the weekly crude oil stock, it was negative 2.108 million. So lower than the forecasted and the previous data. So the effect for the crude oil, actually during the Asian session, the current price of oil is ranging around the 70 per barrel and 69. So even though the data for the oil is bad for the weekly crude oil stock, but it looks like the pair of or this oil rather, no, it went up for 70 per barrel. So as we all know, no, that there's a ongoing vaccination in the US, and there's a speed up vaccination, and then there's a lot of businesses were lifted, and as a result, the demand for oil went up currently. So that is why the price of oil shoot up to 70 per barrel as of this moment. And aside from the API, we also have trade balance for Eurozone for the month of April. And one of the key data later is the interest rate decision for Canadian dollar, followed by the crude oil inventories for the oil as well. So some notable instruments for today is the CAD. As we all know, the price of CAD went up to 40 pips after the release of the data last night. But one of the key data today is the interest rate. So if there's a negative tone after the release, so it may cause the CAD under pressure again. But conversely, if the CAD data is good, so it might limit the upside potential of the USD CAD as of this moment. So possible support is 1.2093 and 1.2083, and resistance 1.2133 and 1.2142 respectively. Again, we have to focus on the data today. 2 p.m. we have German trade balance for the Eurozone, and the key data today is the interest rate decision for the CAD, and followed by the weekly crude oil inventories. So overall, if you're going to trade these currencies, especially the CAD, please put a proper risk management and be cautious whenever the market will release later on the interest rate decision for the CAD. All right, so that is all for our daily briefing today. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a great day.